Great idea. To what extent are there other aspects of the problem? In other words, access to equipment is one facet. Are there other facets, teacher
Yes.
training, and how are there partnership opportunities? Talk about those other aspects of the problem.
So let's hit a few of those. I was a science teacher for about 6 years, and so when I imagined this, it was just the equipment offerings, and then my brain started to wander. When I talked to teachers and just interviewed teachers across the K-12 spectrum, they said, that sounds amazing, and I'm not going to use it unless there's pedagogy support involved. We're not going to do curriculum, but we will sit down with teachers and say, hey, you're looking for a lesson about photosynthesis, or you're looking to spice up your lesson in some way, and we'll be able to point them to our lesson planning database, which will be seeded through places like the NSTA lesson plans, but also anytime a teacher completes a lesson, they submit their lesson plan and it gets added to our database, which is searchable by standard. There are a couple of other New Orleans nonprofits that do support for teachers. So there is a professional development organization that operates in New Orleans, and we're partnering with them to make sure that those teachers can access the supplies that we offer now that they have learned how to use hands-on materials in the other nonprofit.
Really great presentation, thank you. This philanthropic business model that will translate into the district or the schools eventually paying for it is always seems to be a can of worms in the education space. Who are those philanthropies? How will they pay for it? And then what is efficacy? How do you look at efficacy? What will efficacy look like to be able to command the fees that you're going to charge the district later?
Yep, so the first one is, we initially thought that this couldn't happen until it was at scale, that getting $250,000 worth of supplies to put in a room to allow teachers to borrow was what we needed. And we realized that we can pilot lean, and that we can, just with a small amount of funding, with say $5,000, we can provide access to our pilot class and then build that up. So the more supplies that we're able to purchase and put in our library, the more teachers will be able to provide access to, and every small donation actually allows us to use the Amazon Prime or the lean borrowing model to provide access to teachers more and more instead of needing a large sum of cash. So what we've got right now is we were given a grant from 4.0 schools in New Orleans to pilot this program for $10,000. We just received a $15,000 grant from the Keller Family Foundation that is contingent on us getting schools involved. So that money isn't unlocked. So we do need more funds to be able to validate this model as we go to ensure that we get the schools involved. And in terms of efficacy, in terms of like the metrics that we're...
Yeah, what would you be able to point to that would convince a school or a district to actually pay for it?
Yeah, so when we've talked to administrators, what they've basically told us is, we like this idea, and standards aligned is the #1 thing that we want to hear. So that's where another impetus for the lesson plan resource database came from, is making sure that we have lessons that are standards aligned and resources that will work for our administrators to make this interesting for them. We're measuring in our pilot the number of borrows, the number of times teachers repeat borrow, so borrow once and then go again, the number of times they refer other teachers, and right now with our current funds, we can't actually take those new referrals in, but we've been measuring the number of teachers who have invited other teachers to talk to us because they've enjoyed the program. And we are about to measure the first time that 2 teachers will use the same piece of equipment. We have a request for thermometers for this week and for next week, so we will in fact be able to use the borrowing lending model to serve multiple teachers with the same pieces of equipment.